if the whole goal of life is awareness and connecting to Hashem, so it seems like inebriation goes in the other direction. And also, over and over and over in Tanakh, we see it having very negative ramifications. Yes, Rabbi.
Slightly confusing Rashi. Because
Which one? We'll get to them. We'll get to the Rashis.
okay.
Yeah?
Just overall,
the point I was going to make was Rashi's parnosa was from growing up.
Rashi was a vintner.
Right.
That's
exactly.
right.
So here he's criticizing Noach that he should have planted something else first instead of vineyards. So what did Rashi do first before vineyards?
Oh, you're saying did Rashi have a pea garden first?
Yeah? Yeah, well, what was he growing first?
Okay, so we'll have to get into that question. What did Noach do wrong? What's wrong? Because we see that everywhere, it's not just Purim, right? We have to realize that every Kiddush, every Simcha, the 4 kosos on Pesach, right? The 4 cups on Pesach. There's a lot of wine going on. And specifically, on Purim, we have a mitzvah to get drunk. How drunk? Okay. Shulchan Aruch, I always love the simanim, right? This is Siman Tirtzeh. Im Tirtzeh. Right? If it's good for you. It says the Shulchan Aruch, he's giving us the halacha from the Gemara. Chayav inish lebesume bepuria ad lo yada ben or haman lebaruch Mordechai. A person has an obligation to get spiced, right? To get a shikr with wine until he cannot tell the difference between Arur Haman, cursed Haman, and blessed Mordechai. Okay, the Shulchan Aruch offers no further explanation. Right, the Mishnah Berurah comes and gives a few different opinions. What exactly does that mean? Different opinions. Does it mean that you don't know the gematrias, or that you're not interested in between good and bad anymore? But whatever it is, it looks from the Shulchan Aruch like the mitzvah is to get, as Rabbi Ostreicher put it, blind drunk. That seems to be the mitzvah. Ad de lo yada, so you lose your yediyah. So you no longer have the ability to distinguish. Okay. Now there's a Ramah here. The Ramah is also very interesting. The Ramah also needs some explanation. The Ramah says, The Ramah says you don't have to get that drunk. Ella sheyishta yoter milimudo. Rather, you should just drink a little bit more than whatever your usual is. He brings that in the name of the kolbo. Now he says v'yishan, and he should fall asleep. Umitoch sheyishan eno yodeh ben or haman lebaruch Mordechai. He brings that in the name of the Ma'aril. You should fall asleep at the table, and because you're asleep, you no longer have knowledge between the two. Which obviously there's a lot of questions you'd have to ask on that, because why can't you just go to take a Dramamine, right, and then fall asleep with the... Oh wait, my Dramamine's motion sickness. What's the one that makes you
fall
sleep?
asleep too. It has a receptor that makes you fall asleep. Yeah.
All right, so it's a good Yosef shop just in time. What's the one that makes you fall asleep?
It makes you fall asleep? Melatonin, I mean, it's a natural thing that makes you fall
No,
asleep.
the not natural one. Okay, anyways. There are other ways to fall asleep and pass out, but this is from a state of drinking. You're supposed to fall asleep. Fall asleep is considered that you no longer have knowledge. The whole goal is not to have knowledge. We see that ultimately the whole goal is not to have knowledge, even if it means being asleep, which itself is very interesting, right? Because Ani Yoshen, the Libier, right? The worst thing to be as a Jew is to be asleep. You always want to be awake and aware and connected.
So is Rashaim v'Halalat Tzadikim.
That's right. Sleep is bad for tzaddikim. It's good for the wicked. It's good for us when the wicked sleep. Okay, so let's look a little bit at Parshat Noach, and I'll tell you. I'll explain to you where the real connection really comes from Chazal. It's not just here. So we'll see it in a second. Okay, first of all, there's a general rule. Rav Tzadok says that the first place you see something that occurs in the Torah, that's the ikar, that's the main message, the main understanding of this idea. Here we go. So Noach v'yachel Noach isha adama v'yita Karim. So Vayachel, we'll see, comes from the word lachul, to be chal, to start or to begin a process. Noach began. No, that's with a kaf. With a kaf.
Right.
This is with a ches. Noach begins. Yachel Noach isha adama. That's a negative thing. That Noach all of a sudden was tzaddik, and now he's referred to as isha adama. He's a man of the fields. He goes out and he plants a vineyard. So Rashi brings over here from Chazal. Vayachel means to begin. However, the exegetical interpretation, understanding of this word Vayachel, because there are other words we could use to mean begin, right? This is the standard question that bothers Rashi. Vayachel means, okay, I can explain the pshat, but there are a lot of words that I could use that mean the same thing. Why am I choosing this strange word that's very uncommon in Chumash? So Rashi brings the Chazal that it comes from to asa atzmo chulin. He made himself profane. The fact that he went and he planted grapes first, he made a vineyard first, he made himself profane. He was in a place of kedusha, he was in a place of holiness, and he brought himself down to a place that was profane because he planted a vineyard. He should have planted something else first. Okay? So the problem we see, as David already pointed out, it wasn't that he planted grapes, it was vayachel. It was that the first thing he did, he went out, and he planted grapes first. Meaning Noach prioritized the vineyard over other things, and that was his mistake. That he prioritized getting drunk over other things. He should have prioritized other things over getting drunk. Apparently it wasn't the time or the place. And that's part of the question. Why wasn't it the time or the place? What was he supposed to do first? What would have made things different? Why is it different for us? Why is it different for Rashi? Why is it different in Shushan? Maishno, what changed? Why are things different all of a sudden over there?
Everything is about the right time and place in Judaism.
Everything's about the right, meaning there's a time and place for everything. It's Shlomo Melech.
Also being sad, but here and there, Avelus and Tisha B'Av, you're supposed
Right.
to be sad.
So we see there's one time a year where the being sad, feeling hopeless, right? Tisha B'Av is appropriate. The rest of the year it's not. The same thing with getting drunk. We see that getting drunk to the point of Adelo Yada, it's not considered a good thing, except on Purim. On Purim, it's a good thing. So what changes on Purim? Okay, so here's the next Rashi. Sorry, let's go to the verse first. V'yusht min hayayin v'yishkar. He drank from the wine, he became drunk. V'yitgal b'toch alo, and he revealed himself within his tent. Okay, Rashi's first v'yitgal is hitpa'el. He did it to himself. He uncovered himself. The next Rashi, ahalo k'tiv. It's written ahalo, right? It's written with a hey and not a vav. So this is an allusion to the 10 tribes who were referred to Al Shem Shomron, upon the name of Samaria, which is called Ahala. Like you see all over Eicha, we see that the tribes are often referred to as Ahala. Shegalu al Iska Hayayim. Why were they exiled? Because of wine. Okay. So we see, what do we see? First of all, that Noach did the wrong thing because he started with wine. Second of all, we see that he got drunk and he uncovered himself, whatever that means. And we see it's a reference to the 10 tribes who were exiled because of drunken debauchery. That's what we see by Noach. Right? So far, so not good. Getting drunk. Okay. This Tanchuma is actually from the beginning of Parshat Noach. But it raises a very important question that Rav Tzadok asks, and we'll talk about it in a second. Okay, it's a medrash. A lot of people know either the Gemara or the medrash. It's brought in the Gemara, it's brought in the medrash. Each one takes a bit of a different approach. Like this. Lo kibul Yisrael et Torah ad shekafalem HaKadosh Baruch Hu esahar kegigis. The Jewish people would not receive the Torah. They would not receive the Torah until Hashem took Har Sinai and hung it over them like a barrel. Shneimar. How do we know that that's what happened? Because it says in the verse, Vityatzu b'tachtit hahar. It says that they sat in the tachtit hahar. Now the tachtit hahar, what should it have said? Well, the Maharsha says it should have said the meragle hahar. Should have said the foot of the mountain. But tachtit hahar sounds like they're under the mountain. Because the verse sounds like they're under the mountain, our sages tell us that it's an allusion to the fact that Hashem hung Har Sinai over them like a barrel and said the following. Amar Divrei Chama, Amar Lehem HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael. Hashem said the following. If you're willing to receive the Torah, mutav. That's good. That's a good thing. Great. Receive the Torah. That's good. V'im lav, but if not, sham te'ek v'raschem. This is going to be your gravesite. I'm going to smush you. Right? Take the Torah or else. Okay. The Tanchuma continues. V'im toimar. If you're going to say, al Torah shebichtav, this whole story is referring to the Torah B'chtav, right? But we have the Chumash. Hello, Misha Shamar Mekablatem Misatera. Hashem said to him, "Are you going to receive the Torah?" What did everybody say? Anu Kulam v'Amru Nasa v'Nishma. Yeah, we'll do it. We'll receive it. Klai already said they're going to receive the Torah. Right? Here, this is where the Gemara, this is where everybody starts to ask the question on the Gemara. Wait a second. The Gemara itself trying to understand. They already said Nasa v'Nishma. How come Hashem needs to threaten them to receive the Torah if they already volunteered to receive it? Okay? So the Medrash says that was a Torah B'chtav. You know why? Because Torah B'chtav, you don't have to work very hard. It's not so big. How long does it take to read the Chumash? Right, from beginning to end. Don't look at Rashi. You don't need to do Shnai Mikra. Just read the Chumash from beginning to end. It's not so bad, right? It's smaller than Don Quixote, right? It's small. It's not so big. It's not so difficult. Ella Amar Lahen Ela Torah Shebal Peh. Rather, the whole Kafalem Harkegigis. Hashem hanging the mountain over them like a barrel. That's referring to the oral Torah. Why? What was with the oral Torah? Sheyesh b'dikdukei mitzvahs, kalos v'chamuros. You have to go into all these. You have to be very exacting on all these mitzvahs, stringencies and leniencies. V'hi aza kamavet. It's difficult like death. V'kasha kishol kinato. It's hard like the grave itself. The only person who learns it are people who love Hashem with all their heart and all their soul and all their property, right? All their money. Okay. So basically, the Medrash makes a really great pitch for Torah Shebal Peh. Torah Shebichtav is great. It's easy. The Jewish people have no issue receiving the Torah Shebichtav. They're happy to do it. Torah Shebal Peh, it's hard, it's work, it's big, it's confusing. That we're not willing to accept. That Klal Yisrael doesn't want to accept the Torah Shebichtav. But that's the end of the Medrash over here. Okay, the Gemara goes on to say that basically that's how it was left.
Are we talking about the Mishnah at this point, or are we talking about the Gemara when we talk about Baal Peh?
What is Torah Shebal Peh? It's everything. It's okay. Mishnah, it's Gemara, it's Medrash, it's Zohar.
Okay.
Okay? That's Torah Shebal Peh, is everything. Torah Shebal Peh is everything which is Torah, which is binding, which is not written in the Chumash. That's Torah Shebal Peh. It's Shulchan Aruch. I'm saying that's all Torah Shebal Peh.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Klal Yisrael was overwhelmed. They were overwhelmed by Torah Sheba'al Peh. They didn't want to accept it. Torah B'Shechtav, they had no problem. Okay. We'll go back to the Medrash in a second because we'll pick it up with the Gemara, because the Gemara said that this was left open like this. The Jewish people did not receive the Torah completely, meaning not through their own free will. It was all under Hashem's coercion. Up until Purim. That's the Gemara tells us that the Rava says that Kimu v'kiblu, Kimu Masha Kiblu Kvar. Rava tells us that the Jewish people at that point accepted the Torah according to the Tanchuma. That would be Torah Sheba'al Peh. It wasn't until Purim that we came and said, okay, we're willing to receive the Torah now. It was an open deal up until that point. That in itself needs understanding. We'll probably go into that less, maybe a little bit. Okay. The question of Tzadok asks is, if you look at the beginning of the Medrash Tanchuma, starting here in Perek, I think, Beis and Gimel, Parshat Noach. This Tanchuma is from Parshat Noach. It's filled with discussions about Torah Sheba'al Peh. Torah Sheba'al Peh. Rabbi Tzadok asked the obvious question. Why is this in Parshat Noach?
There is some Torah Sheba'al Peh for Noach himself.
What?
There is some Torah Sheba'al Peh for Noach himself.
What Torah Sheba'al Peh does Noach have?
The knowledge about which animals are pure and which are not.
Okay. So, as Eliezer points out, Rashi tells us, Noach brings korbanos. So you have to ask the question, where does Noach know how to bring korbanos from? Right? Someone had to teach him that. So Rashi says, from here we learn that Noach learned Torah that he received Torah from Adam. Now,
He had only seven mitzvahs.
Bnei Noach had 7 mitzvahs. Yeah, but mitzvah means I'm mitzuvah. Mitzvah means that I have to do it, I'm obligated. To receive Torah, to learn things, you could still do it without being mitzuvah, right? It says that Yaakov kept the mitzvah of Tchum Shabbos, right? Of Tchumin. Yaakov kept Tchumin. Yaakov never received the mitzvah tzivli from Hashem to keep Tchumin. He never received the mitzvah to keep Tchumin. Yaakov had Torah, understood Torah. He got to the point where he understood the concept of Tchumin, and he kept it, but it wasn't mitzvah tzivli. Right? Seemingly the whole greatness of Noach bringing korbanos is that Hashem never asked him to bring korbanos.
If he wasn't a Jew, so he wasn't supposed to keep all the Torah.
Okay, so now Yaakov is asking a question. What does it mean for Noach to have Torah? Noach wasn't a Jew. Okay, your question is half of Reb Tzadok's answer. So we'll put it to the side for a second. But basically the big question is that if you're looking at the Tanchuma is filled with all these discussions about Torah and Torah Sheba'al Peh. And it's in the middle of Parshas Noach, which is a very strange place to put it. Seemingly, Parshas Yitro would be a far better place for the discussion of Kafel and Markagigis. That's where the verse is. That's where the whole conversation's happening. Why are we having a conversation over here in Parshas Noach? What does Parshas Noach have anything to do with anything? Good? The question's clear? Okay.
There wasn't enough space for the Perush and Parshas Mishpat.
Oh, you're saying when they got to Parshas Yitro, there was too much they had to talk about, so they bumped it to the earlier part of the book, or maybe they did it to get people to keep reading. They didn't like the Noach stuff, but they liked the Torah stuff, so they did it to put it at the beginning to keep it interesting. Okay. We see two things. We see, first of all, there's a tremendous connection between Noach and Torah. We see also that there's a tremendous connection between Noach and Purim. Because this is the place where Chazal decided to speak about this whole conversation about Kafel and Harkagigis, which is a Purim conversation. And we also see that Noach is the one who tries to bring into the world this concept of mishteh, right? Your life is saved. You're grateful to Hashem. You make a mishteh, but it didn't work by Noach. It didn't work out well for him. Whereas for us, that's the whole thing of Purim. That's the best way to be Makayim Purim is to make a mishteh, is to do a mishteh. Okay, so those are the parallels. Okay, so this is the connection I want to make over here. Rabbi Tzadok has a very interesting approach in discussing the Noach Avraham dichotomy. He says that there were 10 generations, right? This is the Mishnah and Avos, Esher Doros, right? 10 generations. Mi Adam v'ad Noach, from Adam till Noach there are 10 generations. Asar Doros, Mi Noach v'ad Avraham, there were 10 generations from Noach to Avram, right? And Avram was Makabel Schar Keneged Kulam. They didn't succeed in accomplishing what they were supposed to accomplish. Avram comes along and he takes the reward of all those 20 generations. Rabbi Tzadok says, these 10 generation windows, why is it important how many generations there was from Adam to Noach? What does it matter if there were 10 generations, 12 generations, 4 generations? Just say that, from Adam to Noach, right? Nobody succeeded. From Noach to Avram, no one succeeded. And Avram did a great thing. No, 10 generations. You have to know there are 10 generations. 10 generations is Keneged, is corresponding to. 10 generations corresponds to the 10 spheres. And of course, the 10 dibros, the 10 utterances. How do you if you translate dibros as utterances, then how do you translate ma'amarim of Bereshis? How do you distinguish? All right. The 10, not exactly commandments.
The first utterances and the second utterances.
The first and second utterances. The 10 utterances, but also the first 10 utterances and the 10 plagues and all of these 10s. Right? Rabbi Tzadok's not interested in all of the 10s.
10 tribes.
The Ramchal does spend more time showing you the parallels between all of them. But obviously, if there are 10 sfirot, there are 10. Does that have a translation in English?
Spheres?
Sphere. But that sounds like we're in geometry class. Right? If there are 10 sfirot, there are 10 sort of spiritual progressions of how Hashem's influence comes down into the world, then all of these 10s are obviously paralleling that, because that's how things come into expression into the world. That's how they come into the world through plagues, which show Hashem's control over the world. That's how they come into the world through the 10 utterances, right? That's how Hashem creates a world. That's how He builds a world, right? So these 10 generations, each generation was supposed to be fixing, right? Working on connecting to these 10 spheres. Which means after 10 generations, after 10 dibros, after 10 utterances, in a way, right, the parallel notion, they would have been fitting to receive the Torah in the generation of Noah. But they weren't fitting, they didn't accomplish what they were meant to accomplish. So in Noah's generation, they did not receive the Torah. But the possibility to receive the Torah was already there. And of course, thematically going along with what we're discussing, the allusion to that is already found in the Gemara in Megillah. Because the Gemara in Megillah has a few different interesting questions. Where's the allusion to Haman in the Torah? Where's the allusion to Mordechai and Esther in the Torah? It has all these interesting questions. And it says, where's the allusion to Moshe in the Torah? And the word is Bishigam. Bishigam called Basar, when Hashem is deciding to destroy the world in the generation of the flood. Bishagam is Gematria Moshe. That the nefesh of Moshe was there in the 10th generation of the flood, because they had the possibility of receiving Torah, but they didn't succeed in doing it. 10 generations later, Abraham succeeds as an individual in doing it, and then 6 generations after Abraham, all of Klal Yisrael does it as a nation. Okay. So the possibility for Torah exists now with Noach. Noach is the one. He's the one who is the leader of the generation where Torah can be received, and they don't succeed. Right? All the opening of all the Mayanot and the Tahom and all of these things, the Arubot, these are all the influx of Torah that could be coming into the world. But instead of it coming in a positive way, it came in a negative way because they didn't fulfill the role that they were meant to have. 10 generations later, Avram gets it right. Now, what's interesting is the difference between Noach and Avraham is that Noach is the sort of example of what Torah Shebichtav looks like. Whereas Avram is really the ultimate expression of Torah Shebal Peh, as we're talking about individuals. And why is that? Right? Noach had a very different relationship with Hashem. We've spoken about this before, but it's good to speak about it again. Noach had a very different relationship with Hashem than Avram Avinu has. It says, Et Elokim mitalech Noach. Noach walks with Hashem. Rashi says he was mishtamish ke'ezel atomcho. Noach used to use Hashem as a crutch. Seemingly the idea is that he lived in such a crooked generation that the only way he could protect his righteousness was he had a very hermetic lifestyle. He was in meditation, he was in tefillah, he always had to bring himself into a place of nevuah, of connection to Hashem, in order to keep himself from falling. Right? The Medrash says that Noach was what's the language? Kocho ra. His koach was weak. Right? And again, this is all coming with condition. We just have to make a clause because it's important. Noach was by no means a wicked person. He was by no means an ignoramus. Noach was a tzaddik. It's the very same Tanchuma. You go through the Tanchuma, talks about all the ways that you see that Noach was a complete, absolute tzaddik. Okay? That's a different discussion for a different time, where he fell short and why he fell short and what it was about him. That's fine. But Noach was 100%. He was a tzaddik. It says Noach Noach. There's a doubling of his name. That's reserved only for tzaddikim who have completely reached their purpose and goals in the world. Okay. But he was only able to maintain that through this very hermetical connection to Hashem, where it was just him and Hashem. Avram, on the other hand, Rashi brings at the beginning of Parshat Noach, was V'telech lefanai. Avram had the ability to walk in front of Hashem. By Moshe, you're talking about by Klal Yisrael now?
No, Avram.
By Avram?
The people around him say, you're a Nasi Elokim B'Kirbeinu.
Oh, that they saw that they could see that Hashem through Avram. So, okay, good. So Avram was Kocho Yafeh. Avram had the ability to go out into the world, to connect with the physical world, and he knew that Hashem was always there. That it was he didn't need more than that. He didn't need to constantly be connected to Hashem. We see it when the Malachim come. Avram receives his 3 Malachim, his 3 guests, and he's in the middle of having a nevuah. And he says to Hashem, well, he does like an Israeli. Rega. No, probably not. He probably didn't do that. He says, Rega, achnasis orchim. What do you mean achnasis orchim? You're in the middle of Dvekis, you're in the middle of prophecy with Hashem. But Avram's involvement with the world was the way he was able to bring Hashem out into the world, and therefore he saw Hashem everywhere he went, and he didn't need to constantly be connected to Hashem. That's called Kocho Yafeh. So Avram, we know, came to all that through his own work. Right? Torah Shebichtav, there's no work. We read that, right? I'm trying to remember where it is in Chazal that say it, that Moshe Rabbeinu had a lot of milas, but his mila in Torah, our mila in Torah was greater than Moshe's because he didn't have to work for Torah. Moshe received it all from Hashem, right? He just got it all through osmosis. It all went in. Obviously, he had to work a lot to get there. But to have the yigiyah, to have the toil in the Torah itself, that Moshe didn't have. That Klal Yisrael has. There's also a gift for Moshe that we have that. Could have been that we weren't going to have it. It's a Gemara in Nedarim. Okay. So Noach, he's a tzaddik, he's born a tzaddik, all his Torah comes, he receives the Torah, he clings to Hashem, he's born into that home. Avram's born into a home of idolatry, and he has to work and toil and find and fight the rest of the world. Right? He's Avram Ivri, he's on the other side of where everybody's standing. And he has to create this Torah for himself. And he, not until the moment that he creates the Torah and he's come to all the conclusions he's come, only then does Hashem say, okay, here I am. Right? So Avram is the koach of Torah Sheba'al Peh. How did Avram learn Torah? Chazal tell us that his klayot, were his yoetzim, his kidneys, used to teach him Torah. Right? So what does it mean that your kidneys teach you Torah? See, a lot of people have a difficult relationship with their kidneys. Avram had a very good relationship with his kidneys. His kidneys would teach him Torah. Halavai be'al of us. Which means that it was so internalized, he worked so hard to internalize all these concepts within himself. There were new chidushim that were always coming up. It was just a part of him. So now, maybe we can go back to Noach, and we can say the following idea. If Noach is Torah B'chtav, that's his koach, that's his strength in the world. And Avram is Torah Sheba'al Peh. Avram has the koach of the written Torah. That's what Reb Tzaddik says in Pri Tzaddik. The oral Torah. That's what Reb Tzaddik tells us in Pri Tzaddik. So it could be as follows. Now, I'm going to use a phrase that we use a lot. I'm using it tongue-in-cheek. Because if you learn the Gemara over there in Sanhedrin, it doesn't mean the way we say it. But nichnas yain yatsa sod. Right? There's the whole Gemara over there with Rebbe and his sons. Rabbi Chia and his sons are sitting in front of Rebbe, and they say something, they darshan something after they have quite a bit to drink. That makes Rebbe very uncomfortable. And Rabbi Chia tries to calm Rebbe down. He tells him, Nichnas yayin yatsa sod. Don't worry, it was the yayin that brought it out. Why that helps? Okay, all the different Mefarshim try to explain in what way he pacified Rebbe exactly. But we say nichnas yayin yatsa sod. The wine goes in, and sod comes out. Right? For some people, it's nichnas yayin yatsa soda, but that's a different. That's a okay. But nichnas yayin yatsa sod. The sod is the most internal place of the Torah Sheba'al Peh. When we talk about the pardes, right? Pshat, Remez, Drush, Sod. The deepest, most internal part of Torah Sheba'al Peh is the world of Sod. So Nichnas Yain Yatsa Sod, that works if you live in a world of Sod. But Noach wasn't in the world of Sod. Noach, we said, never got to Torah Sheba'al Peh. He was still in the world of Torah Shebechtav. Right? It was everything that he received from Hashem. Avram, who worked to create his own Torah all the time, lived in a place of Sod, so Nichnas Yain Yatsa Sod. It could be that you can make a mishteh as Avram Avinu, and that's a good thing. We do see that Avram does make a mishteh, right? Avram makes one mishteh. When does Avram make a mishteh? Right? The day that Yitzchak is weaned. What's the concept? It's the same concept. The concept of being nursed is that everything's just being given to you, right? Like Torah Shebechtav. Hashem is just telling you what to do. The celebration, the mishteh, is the day that Yitzchak's now going to work. He's going to do it himself. He has to figure out how to feed himself. That's the celebration. That's the mishteh, and it's good. It's not bad. By Noach, it's not a good thing. Okay, so a remez to it in the verse, it's part of the reason why I brought it, is it says here, the verse, if you go back to the verse in Bereshit 9:21, Kafta to Aleph, V'yash min hayayin vayishkar, he drank the wine and he got drunk, v'yitgal b'toch ahalo, and he was revealed within his tent. What is a tent an allusion to all through Chazal? And you don't have to go very far. It's in Medrash Tanchuma. That's where it says, decrees of the Torah. A person who dies in a tent, talking about Tuma in a tent, it's in this Tanchuma that Chazal tell us, Mishiyamus as Asma Ba'oil, that the only way to acquire Torah is if you kill yourself over Torah. Right? That's the Torah Sheba'al Peh. The more a person says to himself, pizza I can have later, drinks I can have later, a nap I can have later, I want to get through this Reb Shimon Shkop, right? That's a person who's internalizing Torah. So, all right, we'll just take a step back. We said this is off the cuff, right? So we're rolling along. We've spoken about this on Shavuos, I think on more than one occasion. You have two perspectives. You have the Greeks and the Hebrews, right? The Greeks, certain scholar by the name of Eric Havelock, a linguist and a Greek classic scholar, he claims that the reason the Greeks became the culture was that they're the first ones who placed the vowel in the written language, right? Meaning before that, other alphabets, the vowels were transmitted orally, and you just had the letters. The Greeks were the ones who put the vowels in, and they created what he calls the democracy of knowledge, right? The greatest of the Greeks is to have a democracy of knowledge. They start writing everything down. Their philosophy becomes widespread throughout the world, and the world becomes Hellenized, right? We're the exact opposite, by the way. It's the Beferish Gemara and Shabbos Daf Lamed Gimel that when the convert comes to Hillel, he teaches him the Aleph base all wrong, on purpose. Right? Hillel teaches him the Aleph base wrong, and the Ger says, "Why'd you do that? Yesterday you taught me this way, today you taught me this way." Right? And Hillel says, because if you don't rely on me, you don't have Torah. Right? The Torah, for a reason, doesn't have vowels inside. It's because we encourage the Torah Sheba'al Peh. So, the Torah Sheba'al Peh is a tremendous chiddush. It's a tremendously novel concept. It's so bizarre and unique. There's no other culture in the world that has it. Because every culture was oral, because they didn't have an alphabet. And once the alphabet came along, then clearly writing things down is a better system than transmitting things orally. You can organize it better. You don't have to be alive and available for the information to get passed on, right? You can pass it on. Right? There's so many tremendous gains that you have to writing things down. It's only us. Hashem says no. Anything which is oral is forbidden to write down. Anything which is written down is forbidden for you to transmit it orally. Each one has a complete and different, unique function. One of the functions of the Torah Sheba'al Peh, of the oral Torah, is this exact idea that when you have a library of books, that knowledge exists outside of you. It's not connected to you, right? There's a very scary Gemara. It's also in Megillah. Correct me if I'm wrong, Rabbi Yosef. About Rav Nachman, that they're coming to eulogize a certain Talmid Chacham, Reish Lakish and Rav Nachman, and he was known to know tremendous amounts of Sifri and Sifra and Mishnah and Brisa, and knew all these things. And Reish Lakish eulogized him, what a tremendous Talmid Chacham he was, what a great Torah scholar he was. And Rav Nachman said, what are you supposed to say over a basket of books? How do you eulogize a basket of books? Right? Rashi says that Rav Nachman's complaint, or his statement, was to say that if a person doesn't actively become involved in the Gemara aspect, the pilpul aspect of it, the developing of the concepts internally, then all you did was you just brought the book from over there to over here. Right? That's a very Torah Shebiksav thing. I just took the book that was here and I brought it over here. Right? If I memorize words, I just spit them back out so that I'm just an organic book. But if I learn it deeply and I come to all sorts of questions and chidushim and different approaches, now there's a whole world of Torah which lives inside of me. Right? These are the klayos of Avraham. his whole body turns into a vehicle of expression of Torah. So Noach is embarrassed in the base medrash. Nichnas yain. He tried to get to a place of not having das, of not having idea. I don't want my seichel in the way. But when you don't have your seichel in the way, and you haven't reached a place where you've completely revolutionized and changed your entire essence into an essence of Torah, so you can't get to Nichnas Yan Yatzasod. So now we have the Satan trying to show Noach that getting drunk, you're like a sheep, and then you become like a lion, and then you act like a pig, and then you're like a monkey, right? Because you've only connected to your animalistic aspect by moving your seichel out of the way, right? You get drunk, you don't have a seichel, so if you're an animal. That's really what you are without a seichel. But if you can become like Avraham Avinu, if you have Torah Shebal Peh, if you toil over Torah, and it becomes yours actively, you change your whole essence. Now your whole essence is Torah. So when you move your das out of the way, it's just Torah just spills out. You don't even need to think about it at that point. It's so organic for you. That's the concept of Nichnas Yain Yatzasod, that a person can get to a place of Ad Lo Yada and it doesn't matter. Because if he's that connected to Torah, the Torah just it just comes. The Torah just creates itself at that point. And a person can actually reach deeper levels of Torah on Purim. He can reach his level of Sod by drinking to a place of Ad Lo Yada. Okay, even the concept of Ad Lo Yada has very deep ramifications. But no, I don't want to go there. We'll leave it. All right. Questions?
How much do you drink?
I try to be Makayim the Ramah. I try to do the Ramah's level of drinking more than my usual, which is not hard, and falling asleep. Yeah.
You've opposed Abraham and Noach as connected to two very different parts of Torah.
Correct.
Isn't it partially because of their life's experience? I mean, Noach's life's experience in his relationship with God, the experiential part of it was very, very dramatic.
Yeah.
You know, God destroyed the world.
Yeah.
You know, and he was in a boat watching it happen, basically.
Right.
Right. Abraham's relationship with God was, you know, they had their first conversation when he was 75 years old, and after Abraham had determined through his own intellectual observation of the reality of God, his whole experience was actually that of a philosopher king, that of a scientist in a way. He looked around and said, there's only one conclusion you can draw from this world that we're in, and that is that God exists. Right? Noach's reality of how God exists was a terrifying experience. You know, so he would naturally, his Torah connection would be one that is in a way emotional as opposed to intellectual, because the experience was entirely emotional that he went through through God.
So good. So I would say this as follows. Everybody's relationship with Hashem is different. And everybody has different roles and different ways that they're supposed to develop that relationship with Hashem. Noach, in several places, is criticized by Chazal for choices that he made. Meaning, Chazal wouldn't criticize him if he wasn't able to choose different. There were things that Noach should have done different, could have done different, should have done different, right? Even this whole idea that, we didn't go into it much, but that Rashi seems to say that if you compare Noach to Avram, there's no comparison, right? If you look in Rav Dessler over there, Rav Dessler says because Noach could have become whatever the Noach version would look like of Abraham. He could have reached the level of chassid, of a person who's beyond just a tzaddik. But he didn't. He fell short. And it could be here, right? Meaning the whole Vayachel, what we started speaking about, we didn't finish it, that Noach starts with the vineyard, right? It's only after you reach a certain place where you internalize knowledge, like what we spoke about. He should have started with wheat, for example. He should have started with Torah, right? Once you've established that, then you can get drunk. But to start with getting drunk, you're building backwards. That's what makes you mundane. It sends you to your behemoth aspect, your animalistic form. It's only after you've internalized Torah that you can get to a place where Mishta is the best way to actually connect to that aspect of yourself.
There is in this the pasuk we say before Mincha on Shabbos. I forgot it now. But
Or Mincha on Shabbos.
right before Shmini, or yeah.
Bani Tfilati.
Yeah.
Bani Tfilati.
So that itself is just saying, I'm preparing my tefillah for you, but it says in the Torah that the verse, the pasuk in Tehillim before that is how the goyim, when they drink, they sing songs in the street and they're naked. But now that this next pasuk is, but we, after we eat our Shabbos meal and drink wine, what comes out of that? Vani tefillah Yidachol Hashem and Mincha. So and
Very nice. Beautiful. Good. Keep going. Waiting for a minute. Huh?
When is coming now?
Okay. Yeah. Okay, there's a lot more to talk about, and
Why only getting the
next week.
Why only the wine? Why not any other substance? Why?
Yes, there's an interesting connection between a lot of questions with yain in general, but there the Gemara in Sanhedrin actually says that yain and sod both have a gematria of 70, and 70 is Keneged, corresponding to the 70 aspects of Torah, right, and the 70 nations of the world. But it's an interesting question in general. Why is it that specifically wine has to come from grapes? What is it specifically about grapes, right? Why isn't it good enough to
Very
drink?
interesting take on wine. Like we see the Nazir and we see the Kiddush. And
Right, even though you could also get drunk on Colt 45.
I think I'm going for Dutch New York. It's only wine that they know.
But we are talking about a much stronger wine.
So that's part of the conversation. That on Purim specifically, there are many places who say you can only Makayim it through wine. You only do the mitzvah through wine. There are other poskim who say that the wine used to be stronger and you could use other stronger beverages nowadays. Whiskey.
Well, basically, why can't they come into the drunk? Come into the drunk basically on wine. On wine. So technically, the person's gonna be tripping on mushrooms or like whatever it is. I mean, they're not something like.
They have such a thing?
No, I'm saying
You're always specifically wine. It's not an You're removing your seichel. It's removing your seichel through wine.
So there's an interesting distinction between wine and other drugs that you could make. The question over here is going to be wine and other alcoholic beverages. Like if you also make yourself pomegranate wine or fig wine, right, why should that be different? Why is it only grape wine that's a problem?
Right.
Other drugs you can talk about the fact that they have different effects, really, on your intellect. Wine actually helps.
It's an inhibitor. It's, I mean, depends how you look at it, but it's kind of more a sedative.
Meaning, but there's
Sedative.
wine still acts very differently on your neurotransmitters than, for example, pot, where wine actually helps you to connect certain thoughts and ideas, whereas pot inhibits you from connecting those ideas. So like certain
Love that. I'm saying like
no, I'm
you know, a lot of
medically,
cultures that you I mean, you do have a lot of
You
cultures
can make
that
the argument, but I don't think that's
no. So I can say
accurate.
I don't know if it's the what do you call it? I can ask him if he still has a copy of it or if he still does it. But I have a friend who's a Rosh Kollel in Chicago who used to be he was a medical student, and medically speaking, he makes a whole conversation describing the differences between the way that pot acts on your neurotransmitters as opposed to wine.
Wine has
Other
wine as
things.
an alcohol, or wine as in specifically wine alcohol.
like wine or whiskey or whatever it is.
I'm assuming all alcohol, but he discusses wine. Meaning the idea why.
Question
wine
also is the
becomes
wine we have
so
now is the same as the wine that they had back
So
then.
they say it was stronger.
Extremely diluted, it's much stronger back then.
Yeah.
All alcohol is the same.
What's that?
All alcohol.
Alcohol is alcohol.
So, Seder, thank you everybody, and part
It's
two
the same
next
at the
week.
end of the day. You get